Hey everybody, welcome back. It's July the 14th. It is long run day for me, so I'm about to go to one of my favorite locations to get my long run on. And it's fitting, the words that seem to come next, like when I said I was going to get my long run on. So today I'm wearing a replacement pair of shoes. The other day, I shared a story with some loved ones, and the story had to do with a pair of shoes. And I know that many of us are not looking in the everyday signs as far as if we were asking for a sign from God, from heaven, from the Creator. If we were asking for a sign, then it would behoove us to pay attention in order to receive those gifts of guidance, of discernment from our Heavenly Father or Mother, or whatever word you choose to use that is not a disrespectful word. You know, in whatever language we think that we talk, for some of us, a disrespectful word can be a word of encouragement, can be a word of endearment. So, and we all know what I mean by that. To give an example verbally would just cause a rift in terms of who would be listening, but who would continue to listen. But today I'm actually going to be wearing a new pair of shoes made by On as I'm taking my long run on. So, the way, like I said, that it was fitting, the words, the way that these things happen, for some of us, we may not listen for long enough to go, he's still telling this story about the shoes. So there was this pair of shoes that I'd ordered for an event that I had anticipated participating in. For whatever reason, that didn't work out. However, I didn't know that it wouldn't work out until the day that it didn't work out. But leading up to that event, though, the shoes that I had attempted to acquire were not going to be delivered in time for this event. And so I contacted the vendor and asked that they cancel the order because the item was not going to be received in time for the event that it was going to be used for. And just prior to that, well, actually with that particular email, the vendor wrote back and said, actually, we're going to send these out tomorrow. We have these right now. We're getting them boxed up, and things have been busy. So the vendor said they were going to send these items the next day, which could have gotten these items to me on time. So I went ahead with the prospect of receiving these when I needed to. The next day came and went, and I never received any kind of follow-up from the vendor. And so I asked them again, cancel the order. The day after that, I got two responses. One was an automated, your item has shipped. And the very next message I got within moments of that was, hey, these actually went out in the mail today, so we can't cancel the order. Now, this purchase was made through a national vendor who also seems to outsource some of their business to other vendors. Because even though I'd purchased these from a well-established national vendor, they actually the order was being fulfilled by somebody else. Now, this somebody else who sent me this variation of shoes overlooked my simple request to not fulfill that order because the item would not be received in time, hence making the overall purchase irrelevant. I could make another choice in advance if that person would just cancel the order. And because monetarily I wasn't prohibited from doing that, I actually had already conducted a separate transaction and had a pair of shoes that I knew I would be able to wear at this upcoming event. And so even though I basically didn't wait for the vendor to cancel the order so that I could get another pair of shoes, I already knew that the pair of shoes that was being sent to me was unnecessary. Now, when I received them, I could have just returned them to the vendor. I could have returned them, could have done anything with them. But what I did was I admired them. The color of the shoes was great. I really wanted to wear these things. And so I went ahead and used them at a future date. During that event, during that experience, which wasn't like a timed trial event or anything, during that time frame, what happened was I basically noticed that they caused my feet great discomfort. Even though they were the exact same model, just in a different color of shoes that I already had experience with. So I thought, well, it could be because it's the first time I wore them. 20 miles later, exactly 20 miles later, I already decided to retire these shoes because on the last 3-mile basic jog, I got blisters in those shoes again. They're still brand new. They still feel brand new. The soles they barely look like they've touched the surface of anything because, again, they've only got 20 miles on them. And yet they continue to cause me situations that seem inexplicable. So anyway, today I'm going to I replaced those shoes in the rotation. I pretty much since acquired a rotation of shoes for every day of the week, believe it or not. I've been blessed. I've been fortunate to have all these experiences. And in the details of the experiences are also signs, are little whispers of situations. And many of us know, did you hear that truck in front of me that was just peeling out when the light turned green? They had to get away. They didn't probably know why they had to get away from me, but they had to get away. And so these are little signs that if we're not paying attention, we might not ever recognize. For me, it's all a very well orchestrated discussion of non-stop signs. All of these things that we're all experiencing are signs. The fact that you're listening to this and going, what's this? I keep seeing this guy. What's this guy saying? Why is he saying it so that I'm listening to it? In other words, why am I saying it to you? Well, these are lessons and experiences that I had to learn through experience. And for many of us who weren't parented properly in some instances, and by that what I mean is we don't discuss these spiritual lessons with one another. In fact, I'll even say who weren't parented in this way. It's not that it wasn't proper. It's a choice. For all of us, for each and every one of us, we have the choice to bring our family into the folds of communicating about these topics or to overlook all of the glory of what it is that we're even here for to begin with and what it all means. So I didn't mention the brand of the shoes I'm going to be running in as a sponsored any kind of a sponsorship. It was just by coincidence. It's an observation. I'm not being paid by anybody who happens to participate in these brand discussions that I'm talking about. I'm simply advocating for paying attention to the signs. You know, if your holy creator, if your all-knowing creator were to bestow upon you their 2 cents so that you could hear what their 2 cents of insight were. If you said, hey, you know, God, I've been pretty pleased with my life, and I'd like to ask, what are your 2 cents? What is your will? How do I do that more efficiently? Well, what happens is, especially when we really focus on it, if we're on point, if we're laser focused, and if we really pay attention to the little signs, like that truck that accelerated undeniably fast to the point where they spun their wheels when the light turned green on this beautiful morning, this beautiful celebrating day, on this beautiful, what's going to be a super hot day here in the city where I'm at. The signs that I also see along the way allude to the fact that they elicit the feeling of a potential shift, and we can all feel it. Some of us are so fortunate, and we also forget to overlook those signs around us that show that all these beautiful things that are occurring, because all of these things aligned to get us what we wanted, also include some interactions where some people participated just to meet the numbers, just to basically have that thing to show on paper, you know, have that thing to show on their finger, have that thing to show in their driveway. Some people weren't really doing it because it brought any kind of joy. It's just it's a life of mediocrity to try and live as if any of these things are any more relevant than the basic discussion of, are we happy right now? If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. You know, I mean, if you're happy, you can't dim that. Nobody can. Did you hear that weird confirmation? That was the AC duct system in this car doing some weird shut-off thing. There's all kinds of different little variations that we can interpret in so many different ways, comically even. If that was my esophagus gurgling, I would have said what it was. For whatever reason, I'm guesstimating that that's where the inner chambers of that sound sounded like they were coming from. That's where the sounded like it was coming from, the inner chambers of this air conditioning system. So I can say a lot of things, get tripped up over little words here and there, and many people can go ahead and make assumptions and decisions based on what they think the other person thinks. But the hardest thing is to make a decision based on what we ourselves would like to do. And the easiest thing to do is to ask constantly, thy will be done. You know, maybe even say it believingly. But mostly the participation is what puts into motion all of the thoughts that we have. In my world, I recognize the finality of this human experience that we all have. It's, you know, it's got a time span. So if we do not address the things that are in our heart, we go through this time span without having ever fulfilled any of the obligations that we would have been entrusted to fulfill. And if somebody asks you, hey, this will not arrive in time, please don't send it, and you have the power to do that rather than conduct a business transaction as usual, maybe it might be time to reevaluate the business model and what it is that we're trying to fulfill. Is it our will or is it the will of a higher power? It's just something to think about. Thank you for spending this 15 minutes of time here with me, resonating positive energy. Until next time, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.